Dr. Dari. It was an interesting and very interactive session with Dr. Dari. Now we have another speaker, and it's my privilege to introduce you with Dr. Hemraj Bansal, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Central University of Himachal Pradesh, Dharamshala, and very interesting profile. Dr. Hemraj does have. He's co-edited three books, namely Mapping Diaspora Identities, India and Beyond, Anamika 2017, Homogeneity in Heterogeneity. Very interesting. Memory, Culture, and Resistance in Aboriginal Literatures from Around the World, Authors Press 2018, and Gendered Spaces and Ruptured Identities. It seems a poetic title there. Representation of Women in African Literature. So he has done, also writes poems in English as well as Hindi. So has published a book of poetry in Hindi. I hope the title is understood to everybody, titled Hafti Zindagi. Hafti Zindagi. So it's connected to the life. So author, and then having more than 30 research publications and book chapters in his credit. We have with us Dr. Hemraj, who has been awarded, who is the recipient of Professor Jayadeh Memorial Best Paper Award 2022 and ISM Award for the Best Paper at 2021 Melau International Conference, and the Best Presentation Award on Shakespeare 2014. Sir, please join us on the lecture, and you will be talking on methods of research in English studies. So it's very specific here. So kindly join us, sir. The platform is yours now. So please.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Kindly give me a minute or so. I'll share
Yeah,
my
yeah,
screen first
yeah,
before I move to
yeah.
my presentation.
You can. Please.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Can you view it, ma'am?
Please recheck actually your screen sharing. You go to the screen sharing, and the things will
That
be.
is that is what that is what I'm doing, ma'am. Just a minute.
It may take a moment. It may take a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
think it
okay.
is moving.
Yes.
Right now?
Yeah, it's good. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, and I do hope that both my that is voice as well as the video is clear to you.
Yeah, both are clear as of now. We hope.
Okay. Okay, so when it comes to this presentation, in the very first place, let me acknowledge here, ma'am, that you are moderating the session, this session really well. So I thank you, ma'am, and then I thank Government College Tangmag for this opportunity, and simultaneously I am really grateful to Dr. Shelja Vasudev, the organizing secretary for this international faculty development program, because it is she who also introduced me to this Cape Comorin Trust. And I also appreciate the efforts of Professor Regin Sylvestre for his these consistent efforts for organizing this number of literary activities throughout the year. Now, as far as my presentation is concerned, it is actually based on Gabriel Griffin's book, Research Methods for English Studies. And while I went through the book, and then as we have actually this book for PhD students who come here, for their PhDs in our university. So it is what we have prescribed them. But then, as I gave the title for my presentation for this talk, I was actually thinking that I'll be able to cover everything, but it is not possible to cover actually everything in 1 hour's talk. So I'll try to cover as possible in this that is presentation. So in the very first, I would say this presentation in the very beginning. See, let me differentiate actually between these what I would call it three things, that is research methods, research perspectives, and then research skills. Now, when it comes to see these research skills as such, now research skills are actually techniques for handling material. And these skills, they include search skills in libraries, editorial skills, bibliographical skills, dissertation skills, such as, for example, how to structure a book length piece of writing, and then IT skills, period specific skills, and so on and so forth. Now, such kind of skills, they can actually be distinguished, they can be differentiated from research methods, which are concerned with how you carry out your research, right? And then the choice of method will depend on the kind of research one wants to conduct. So in this case, if I look at these research methods and then see research perspectives, one thing that I would like to tell is that, well, while research methods are concerned with how you conduct a given piece of research, uh, methodologies are concerned with the perspectives, right? Perspectives that you bring to bear on your work, such as a feminist or a post-colonialist one. So, I mean, there are these many different critical readings of diverse literary texts, and then it is the way how we do it, that it depends as to what kind of perspectives or approach we are trying to bring to a text. If I have to give an example, a feminist reading of Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, for example, it might consider the ways in which the text, right, actually gives or lends that space to women and men in the text, and then it may remark upon the Austen's novels a trait of confining women to house and garden and so on. But then if I have to apply the post-colonial, I would say, this perspective to the same novel, so my focus will be different, because here in a post-colonialist reading, I would focus on the role which Sir Bertram's ownership of plantations in Antigua plays in the novel's portrayal of male authority, distribution of power, the relationship between maybe at home and abroad, and of course, and absence or presence of rulers. So I would say, what I would say is that it is this brief description of the differences, right? Bringing a feminist or a post-colonial perspective to bear on a text, which indicates, see, one important aspect of conditioning or say conducting a research project. That is actually what is concerned with selection, right? It is actually deciding on a particular research project, which is to a significant, I would say, or to a large extent, about deciding on the specific research skills, methods, and methodologies necessary and appropriate to conduct that research. So, for example, when examiners they read PhD theses, or panels when they assess research applications, they do this in I would say, in part, uh, as to how appropriate that selection is, and what does it show about a candidate's knowledge of the area they want to investigate, and their understanding of the skills and methods necessary to complete that particular task. Now, this kind of selection implies a narrowing down of the vast array, right? That vast array of what skills, methods, and methodology which remain actually open or available to a researcher. But at the same time, this must not a blind, one to the fact that all research requires more than one research skill or method, though not usually methodology, right? For instance, if one decides to write a biography, one might conduct archival research, write textual and document analysis, interviews. It can be discourse analysis, or there can be visual methods too, right? Or there may be a quantitative, that is methods. Why? Because the researcher here wants to arrive at a particular conclusion, right, as to what kind of what kind of shape the final product would eventually take, right? So even quite conventional close readings of texts require a range of such methods and skills. And then researcher, then they never employ, I would say, just one research skill or method, but then they go for a, that is a combination, right, of methods. So as we what I would say, as we go talking about it, it is like that. Well, uh, all these research skills and methods, they are required in order to write a wonderful, I would say, it can be a book, it can be a thesis, or anything, I mean, that whatever we may take up. Now when it comes to autobiography as such, so autobiography, it is actually wherein I would say, we look at what that is, how much an individual has disclosed about himself, right? Just a second before I actually move to this, what I call this, this next slide here. So it is which pertains to, I'm not able to go further. Just a moment, ma'am. Ma'am, slide is visible now. Yeah.
Slides are visible, but I think not moving. You just forward the other.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
You click on the other slide. That will be.
Okay, yeah, I'm going ahead.
And you should go for
I'm
slideshow because the whole screen is visible.
I think you can see now.
Mhm. Yes, slide is there, but the whole, that's true. Whole screen is also there. You can
Okay,
just
ma'am.
take the option of the slideshow if it is there. If it is not, then it's okay also.
Okay, ma'am. Please give a moment.
Hmm. You will have to go manually to the slides then.
I can do that, but then the problem that I'm facing currently is that, well, if I do that, then I do not find myself visible.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
also
in
important.
the slideshow. Is it okay if I keep it like this?
Yeah, it's okay. I think participants should not have any point.
No, it's
I
okay.
think,
Okay.
It's not in a
Uh,
position to move it. Yeah.
okay, so
please.
okay, ma'am. Then I move to here. See, autobiography actually, as when I look at it, it is autobiography as a research method, right? And how it is important, a part of, obviously, all those who make this research into the lives of others. The modern world, or at least the modern West, I mean, it has made much of the centrality of education and knowledge to the lives of, I would say, these modern citizens. And so our modern student of autobiography is acting within a discourse which emphasizes the importance of, I would say, information, and claims openness about it as something which amounts to a civic virtue. Now, the individuals who are the subjects of autobiography, we need to see this, that they live in the same way as the researcher within a world where the boundaries of the public as well as the private are increasingly fluid. Moreover, it is like that. Well, those boundaries are often rewritten by the subjects of autobiography themselves. so that what once appeared as a search for information, right, especially on the part of the researcher, it is eventually which goes on to appear about a subject who is now made meaningless by what? By the self disclosure of the subject. And it is something which you would find raises a question concerning what? It raises a question concerning as to whether or not autobiography it can actually survive in the 21st century, given that aspects of Western culture apparently they compel individuals towards increasingly radical self-revelation. Just as, for example, researchers you would find now are now invited to disclose their standpoint. That is what we think is uh, important while we go for these presentations. Such proposals are made. So it is said that, well, what is your standpoint or so? And then see, individuals sometimes are also invited to, make transparent their own sexuality, ethnicity, value system. And it is in this connection then that the potential subjects of autobiography, they often remain anything other than closed books. So in this culture of revelation, the researcher, if we actually look at him, right, look at her, right, because he or she is compelled by what? That is by the imperatives of his or her this professional life, right? So it is in this culture of revelation that the researcher has to attempt to establish what I would call a reading of the lives of others that does not become simply a collection of information. That is why what I'm saying is that, well, after all, we are going for a convincing reading, and we are not simply searching for something which is simply information. So if we look at actually the 20th century, so in the history of the writing of English autobiography, what we find is that there was this crucial watershed moment, right, in this genre, when in 1967 there was this publication, which I have written here, that is Michael Holroyd's Life of Lytton Strachey. Now, what was done in this particular that is autobiographical study, it was like that Holroyd, he made it clear in his biography that Strachey was actually a gay. Now, moreover, we are not only talking about a Strachey, but at the same time, see, the sexuality of his friends, right, and associates was often complex, and it was distinct from prevailing social modes. So I would say the permissive society, which was at that time, right, the time of 1960s, right, what that assumed was that it was now possible to write about the sexuality of named individuals. Right. So I mean, in the years that follow, we find a proliferation in this genre, right? And then, of course, paradoxically too, if you look at it, greater disclosure has led to the return, what I would say, for more interpretation in autobiography. So see, you are faced with the culture, right, where the researcher is increasingly under pressure, right, to interpret the life, right, quite as much as to that is obviously document it. And it is in this change that we can perhaps see what I would call the search in autobiography transformed actually from a search for the person, as I told, and then to a search for a that is what seems to be a convincing reading. So I mean, it is this move then which makes us what I would call that is as to how we can be see true to the facts, and at the same time how can we actually say that, well, we it is anything which pertains to an individual's actually secrets, that is something which how much liberty we can take in making that thing public. So largely what you would find is that this boundary between public and private, right, that is becoming quite fluid, right? So that is a problem which actually what I would say is that yes, because as I have written there that well, uh, how could you go for the status of fact? That is one thing. And at the same time then see what is more important for us, is it life or is it afterlife? Because it is a time wherein it becomes really challenging a task actually, right, to do justice to the individual. I mean, whose needs do you cater to? Are you catering to the needs of the individual, right, that you are doing this research about, right? Or are you doing justice to those actually who question your, what I would call it, standpoint, right, in this? So it is like that, the detection of the past, right, and unmasking of the past. Of course, it is something which has got an important part of important place, right, in autobiographies as a research tool for both the social sciences and the humanities, right? But autobiography, it has shifted radically in its relationship to its subject in the I would say a past that is those 40 to 50 years earlier too. We had autobiographies, right? We also we move to, for example, Saint Augustine's confession. We go to Jean-Jacques Rousseau's confession simultaneously. Why? Because where these people there, they wanted to say that well, they want to justify their life, they want to justify themselves. So it is there that you find people like Rousseau claiming that well, how could I be wicked when I did not have anyone around me, but then the best specimen of the world around, that is the best people around. So see, one does not want to be branded as someone who is against a particular maybe religion, right, against maybe a particular minority group or so on. And then yeah, if that has been done with an individual, the individual undertakes that research, right? But then the other thing simultaneously that you find in this is that well, we do not see find justice being done with the author, right, when it comes to undertaking autobiography as a research method, right? So self justification that I am talking about, right? So many writers of autobiographies, they are motivated by nothing except this, I would call, justification, right? Which and it is an emotion which may reveal itself in either greater or lesser, I would say, simplicity. Now when it comes to culture of fear is when you want yourself to be justified. You do not want yourself to be scrutinized, to be subjected to that, to that scrutiny of like let us say very harsh critics, right, or an unacceptable chunk of audience which belongs to a particular maybe a sect or so. So it is in that case that the autobiographer as such, what is it that he wants to document, what is it that he does not want to show. But then when a researcher takes this as part of his project to conduct a research on a biography, for example, right, or an autobiography, for example, so it is there that these very things, they need to be taken care of, right? So if we have to look at it as to how women look at this project, and then if you look at Simone de Beauvoir's Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter, that is an example of an autobiography which is written about escape from a certain social milieu, right? Because you would find that there is present in that work what I would call the essence of emergence into the light of intellectual life, a sense of emergence, right? Now entirely absent also is any sense that this milieu is just as much part of the social world as the one left behind. So if we have to I would say use autobiography as a research method, right? So what we need to look at is that well, consider the problems of using a method that, for example, all its trends can also pathologize the subject beyond general relevance. The very real, the very, I would say, salutary importance of autobiography is that it acts as a bulwark against the over socialized account of human beings. So, what I would say is that once we begin to define individuals like uh, as members of classes, genders, or races, we obscure not merely individual difference, but also much of the dynamic of what we can call it social life. Right? You just look at Sylvia Plath. So many biographies of Sylvia Plath have come up, and then yes, it is therein that you could find that she did not want to be talked about those things which actually you find coming out into those biographies, right? So it is there that you can look at while you consider using autobiography as a research method. Now, as we move further, I also go to talk about oral history as a research method. Now, oral history, as you can look at it, it has got that, what I would say, familiarity, especially when we are at the beginning of the 21st century. It has become very popular. All of you would agree with that. And the oral telling of public and personal histories is an everyday event which you could also find on radio, you can find on television, right, in films, right, or elsewhere, right, in disciplines like anthropology, education, history, geography, political science, and whatnot, right? So here, interviews with I would say literary authors, as well as recordings of personal experiences of that cultural phenomena, that all become obviously important, right? Be it, for example, you can talk about theater going, right? You can talk about reading. I mean, all these personal experiences of cultural phenomena, they're available, right, for studies in collections, right? You can look at the National Sound Archive and so on. And more generally, it is oral history which enables the study of subjectivity, right, or the study of these subjective constructions of the self and others through spoken narratives. And then when I call it as something as a recovery history. So a recovery history is which is primarily associated with say these cultural studies too, right? And oral history, we know that when it comes to Britain and the US, it is there that it had its those I mean, it had that beginning in those countries, right? That is in the 1960s, and you find that the main influence in this was a radical social history movement which challenged the focus at the time of mainstream history on political elites, and at the same time economic trends and which were prevalent there, and it demanded an end to the neglect of the ordinary person. And at the same time, that pioneers in literary studies, such as we have the name of Richard Hoggart, we have the name of Raymond Williams, they were revaluing the masses as sources, right, and as subjects of literature, right? Historians, they turned their attention to the history of working class people, and then who were the participants in that labor movement, and then members of subcultures. So the advocates, I would say, advocates of this oral history, right? They could ask new questions regarding what, as to uh, uh, the social and cultural life, which I mean, policy documents, or which may be social, what you would call it, social statistics could not answer, right? So recovering histories that would otherwise be lost, that is where this project becomes important, right? And then the name which I have not mentioned here, but then there is one important book which came out by Paul Thompson, right? The book is actually called, it is called this The Voice of the Past, right? And then it is in that book that we find first actually systematic study being done, and it was, as I told, it was published in 1978, right? And then it is where that we find this recovery approach actually takes place, right? And then there is this public recording of events, right? What role actually women did play during, as for example, home guards during the World War II, right? What role does memory can play, narrative can play, culture can play in all this? And then simultaneously see how how I mean the when oral history is taken as a search method, how it can enrich, I would say the already conducted research there. Because see, you will find, of course, gaps between what has been done earlier, and if you go back to that period now, if it is possible, if you could find actually some people who actually acted in these women's suppose these who acted as home guards during that time, you would find that what women say at, I mean, on their own in the form of interviews, that is what is going to make your research more authentic. So it is in this purpose, it is from this perspective then that oral history as a I would say research method, it occupies an important, that is a place here. Now I mean, it depends on you what kind of sampling you do, right? But when it comes to the selection, it can be, I mean, a group of manageable size, right? Who themselves have worked in those as I mean in this connection as home guards, right? And then I mean, kind of factors actually which remain responsible as to how those actual experiences could not be recorded in the policy documents, right, of those times. So oral history, right, it can become as a, I would say, potent, a viable a tool in order to say conduct a fair, authentic piece of research, right? And then when it comes to this trauma, right, trauma witnessing and memory, so obviously we look to those events, right? You can think of conducting that research around what happened during 9/11, and then what was actually what people actually went through at that time. So that can also become a more visible to I mean the people, especially when the that is the near and dear ones of victims, they are interviewed, right? And or for that matter, the survivors of those 9/11s, they are actually interviewed. So it is where again I would say that oral history, it does occupy that significant place. And now when it comes to I mean visuals as a research method, so what do we find is that yes, in geography you go to maps, you go to obviously photographs, right? And then as we go into this 21st century, you would find that there are these overlapping boundaries now, right? History now being written or read to be more precise, read by geographers or so, right? And then historians actually, that they would need something from something in the form of evidence, some scientific illustrations, in order to drive home their idea, in order to drive home their point, right? So it is this what I would call cross border traffic, which has become an important aspect in the present, right? And then yeah, this very thing that, well, modern life takes place on screen. So given these academic, I would say, developments, right, there is this shift in the wider cultural context, right? And it seems more and more likely that a researcher in the field of English will notice and be simultaneously intrigued by the visual images that also proliferate in and around their traditional object of study. Traditional object is obviously the book, right? But here there are many images, right? Many books have got images associated with them. You look at the covers, right? You look at the illustrations, you look at publicity, you look at film adaptation for that matter. But at the same time, it is quite hard to think of a visual image that is not accompanied by language, right, in some form or another. For example, you look at the paintings in galleries, they have got captions, right? You look at catalogs, right? And you look at price tags, right? You look at most of the advertisements which have got their meaning actually anchored in text, right? You can look at these painted altar pieces in churches, right? And then you can find that they are seen with a with a that is guidebook in hand, right? Or there may be a guide's voice explaining them, right? So it is something which you can actually look at, right? So what I would say is that when I'm looking at visuals as a research method, so images and written or spoken words, I mean, it is something which seems to be living in what, in a sort of intimate relation then, right? But by and large, if you look at the critical apparatus as such, right, brought to bear on what brought to bear on on them, they appear either intent on keeping them apart or on seeing one as subsidiary to the other, right? So there seems to be a general, I would say, a reluctance to discuss the ways in which meaning cannot be self-evidently read of these images. So English studies rarely pays attention to the imagery, right, that accompanies the written text. And that is what I want to actually say in this, that that while the way in which visual images are scrutinized for their meaning, right, it very often depends on broader contextual accounts, right? So it is therein that we need to obviously simultaneously focus more on images to the visuals to than on doing something on the basis of that written commentary, right, that you find actually accompanying a particular text, right? Now, as I move further, I about to that is this is something which I was referring to, right? So now it is about this ethnographic methods in English studies. Now when I talk about it, it is in this that participants observation, it becomes important for us. We all know this, right? In ethnographic models, what do we find? How do we look at it, right? We have the conventional image of the ethnographer who goes out into the field, right? Traditionally, it is a distant land of whose people and way of life little was known, who lives closely alongside the people for an extended period of time, observing social interactions. It can be customs, it can be rituals too, right? So while in the field, the ethnographer records his or her observations by making field notes, and then on leaving and returning home, right? It simultaneously produces a written ethnographic study of that particular community. Now it is something which was there in traditionally. And another thing that you find is that it is since a researcher actually goes out in the open, right? So it is something which you find that research is conducted in a that is natural setting rather than an artificial one. For example, laboratories or so, where most of the research actually takes place. So what I want to say here is that now, if you look at travel writing, when it comes to English discipline for that matter, right? So travel writing has made us actually think over as to how it can be made a part of this ethnographic research too, right? Because see, there has been these travels for quite long time. You look at Homer's Odyssey, right? Or you look at Don Quixote, right? So these are something which make you look at travel as something which has been in vogue for quite a long time. You look at missionaries, you look at explorers, you look at sailors or pirates, ambassadors, etc. Now they have produced those written accounts, and see, it is here that now see, we are not keeping ourselves confined to that. Is a traditional way of saying that, well, we go to the field and do something there. But at the same time, what is important to keep in mind here is that the way how audiences respond, it also encompasses potentially a wide variety of textual forms and participatory settings, right? So the focus could be a written text, right? It could be a performance, right? And then yeah, it could be a documentary, it could be a photograph, and so on. I mean, this is how the list goes on, right? Similarly, the likewise, if you look at it, the audience could be a conventional audience in a theater, right? It could be the readers of a novel, right? A viewer of a television, etc. I mean, the objective here is to explore how texts, right, and performances are negotiated, they are interpreted and given meaning by the reader or viewer, right? So, well, I hope I have got here 10 to 15 minutes. I'll move quickly to my next slide, which looks at discourse analysis. Right now, when I look at discourse analysis, what I want to state here is that, well, I mean, it is something which is concerned with uh, that is investigation of language, right? Now it can be written, it can be oral, right? As it is actually used, that is how we look at it. And it is different from textual analysis, right? Because see, in the very beginning, what we are trying to convey is that language is here, it is invested. What I mean to say is that language is not a neutral tool for transmitting a message, but rather, all communicative events, whether these be readings of novels, plays, poetry, etc., or anything else, they constitute a particular way of talking about and understanding the world, right? It is on the part of both the producer as well as the that is a consumer, right? And such discourses, right, or such discourse analysis, right, uh, they, I mean, you find references of both a theory of language use, right, and language use, as I told, not neutral but invested, right, and a method for analyzing language in use. Now, see, just look at this particular sentence that all of us are familiar with, right? We often talk about this, and then what we find in this sentence is that, well, Jane Austen, in this particular, that is what I would call it, novel, in that particular novel, we find that, well, it opens with this famous statement. The statement was actually that it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a that is a good wife. Now, how do we look at it, right? So it is like that. She does not so much proclaims a neutral, or I would say an objective fact, as musters her rhetorical force in a way to offer a particular construction of a specific kind of single man, right? And that rhetorical force, actually, it sets out both, I would say, to project a certain view and to set up Austen's particular view of a single man as the only way of you viewing him, right? Without, however, making that explicit by referencing either an author or a narrator figure through qualifying the statement by a phrase such as, for example, she does not say, in my opinion, right? It is not there. So Austen's rhetorical resources include, for example, if you look at it, the use of the present tense and indicative verb form. It is what she says, right? Which suggests what? Fact and underscore validity. And it is followed by a truth claim, universally acknowledged, right? Why? Because she wants to lend persuasiveness to her view and assert the normativity of a position that would not necessarily be shared, for example, suppose by gay men who might be single and in possession of a good fortune, but not in want of a wife, right? So it is like that, well, while she is doing this, right, she is constructing a world of normative heterosexuality, right? And Austen's introduction simultaneously attempts to close down the possibility of other ways of reading the situation of a man in the position that I just talked about, right? So it is like that, she is actually for this heterosexuality, right? And then yeah, why should a man actually be uh, why should a man who has got this, what I would call a good fortune, for that matter, right, or a single man who is in suggestion of a good fortune must be in want of a wife only. Why wife there? Why can't it be a friend? Right, it can be a friend simultaneously. So that is what I want to say, that well, we need to look at this such patterns in language wherein see critical discourse analysis. It becomes an important method. Why? Because we want to go behind see what kind of a world the author actually wants to construct. And at the end of my presentation now, I'll quickly go to this creative writing as a research method. Now, when it comes to creative writing as a research method, so now many universities, they have started actually doing this, right? The only problem that I notice is that you people would also agree with. It has actually to do with see as to how much time you have got actually to go forward, right? That is to go forward to complete your research, right? For example, if you write something creative in the course of, I would say your PhD duration, how much time you are going to take, right? Suppose, for example, if we say that somebody writes a novel. So think of James Joyce. He took 7 years to write Ulysses, but we are never given 7 years to complete our PhD dissertations on a creative that is creative writing as a research method. And you just look at his other work, which Finnegan's Wake, that took 20 years to be published. That is one important point which makes us look at, that is adopting creative writing as a research method. Another thing is that it is usually said that is in research, that you put forward a hypothesis and then you try to prove that out, right? It is like, how do you marshal an argument, right? How do you actually think critically? How do you write clearly and cogently? So all this becomes important for us to consider in research work. I mean, research that we traditionally do in terms of, taking up some textual items, right? In for that matter, literature, right? Or some film studies in new media also. But here, one thing which lends it, I would say, that validity, it is that writing research is a means of discovery. And similarly, see, writing also happens to be, creative writing, a means of discovery too, right? And then if that is clear, because the moment a research student for that matter wants to adopt creative writing as a research method, so he would obviously need to think critically. He also need to write clearly and cogently. So that applies to him as well. So it is where that what I think creative writing as a research method can be taken. And moreover, when it comes to translation, that is what is happening in many universities now. In my university, some translation projects are taken by research students, and then both theory and praxis, they go hand in hand, right? You can take a novel written in Hindi for that matter and then translate that into English, and simultaneously you can also talk about this thematic analysis, right? And then you can obviously apply the research approaches to that particular subject that you have taken for discussion. So with that, I would like to stop here. I think the time is going to be over. So over to the moderator, Mir Hamida ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Hemraj, for the very, I should say, very elaborate talk on methods of research in English studies. A combination of methods and skills is required, and we should not pathologize the subject beyond the human relevance. And many methods, visuals as a research method, ethnographic methods, discourse analysis, and creative writing, the latest one. So these are different methods Dr. Hemraj discussed, and I request participants to quickly give your queries so that we move forward to the another speaker of ours, because we have already short of time. So
Okay, can I ask?
yeah,
Um,
please.
yeah, I'm Shanti from Goa. Um, Dr. Hemraj, my question to you is that in under this visual as a research method, what about the gaze in a
Under,
painting?
ma'am, sorry, I didn't get your first. In
Question
a,
to you is the visuals as a research method. If you see the in paintings, the gaze, the male gaze.
I mean, this is something which is. Yeah, this is something which is a subject of I would say considerable that is attention. It has remained as a subject of considerable attention, especially in feminist criticism. And one of the examples that I would like to give you here is you look at the painting actually of the rape of that is Lucrece, right? When there is that moment when she is being raped, I could have shown that to you, but then unfortunately I haven't put that here. That really shows that where is that male gaze in that particular painting. It remains actually on the that is those body parts of the of that is Lucrece, which he actually wants to devour, right? So, and because his purpose here remains to do what his purpose remains to, because he has come from a battlefield and then he wants to satiate his lust. And there, that male gaze, as you can look at it, I mean, in a visual painting, the painter has actually given it such a such a color, such a hue, that well, the entire question of that is female submission, it comes to light, right? So it is like that. Yeah, when you look at a painting, obviously we need to bring in focus, bring in focus, especially that is I mean, those that is, it can be glances, right? It can be hand movements, right? Which obviously there won't be any movement in the image, but then yes, where they are heading to, and something which and the moment which has become frozen in time. So we need to pay attention to those particular little, right, subtle details, so that we could actually drive home the idea of as to how the issue of male gaze has actually been negotiated in that particular image. That is just one way of looking at it. You can actually look at Rossetti, right? You can look at her brother, right, who was also a famous pre-Raphaelite painter, right? In an artist's studio, you can read that poem, which wherein this question of male gaze has actually been, yeah, taken up.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Your presentation was really very good, and the answer I really liked it. As you said that in biography, where the life of a person is not that important uh, when compared to the past life, because we compare it with the present, our present situation with the past of any particular person about the biography which we are doing the research. My question is that what are the theories which we can use? Because you have the post-colonial theory, you have power theory, and feminist theory, so many theories. So I have this always this question that what theories can be used, because our study in literature is that only theories than the creative research.
You mean concerning autobiographies?
Yeah,
Now
it is not.
see,
No, it is.
it depends. I told you in the very beginning that well, autobiography that we are actually taking for our research, its primary focus is on what? It is actually on, obviously we are searching into the life of an individual who probably may have lived, see, some 50 or 60 or 100 years before us, and then how we are looking into his life now. That is one way of looking at it. But then when it comes to what theory to apply here, again I would say that depends actually on as to what kind of writer you have taken. Have you taken a writer For example, for whom the question of race is more important, or you have taken up a writer for whom the question of, for example, these gender issues is more important. I mean, gender, which obviously encompasses everything, right? All that LGBTQ, everything, right? So that application of theory would depend on, that is, the writer and his background, right? And at the same time, see what is it that the writer is not happy about, right? Or what is it that the writer wants to highlight? So it is on those things that the application of a theory would depend, right? So there can't be, I would say, the kind. I mean, I can't suggest that you use this or use that. I can only do that once the subject of an autobiography is known to me. If I have to talk about, Maya Angelou, and that why the caged bird sings, I need to go back into her background and then think of as to how the writer as such, she was raped by her mother's boyfriend at the age of 8 and so on, how there is that sense of racial abuse, right? And at the same time sexual abuse within, that is, African American communities, right? Within African, that is, community, and as well as that is African American community as well. So that would depend on that, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was nice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody, for the interaction. Also, we should